SIA the podcast, where our mission is to offer thoughtful and inspiring parenting and educational programming. We are committed to producing impactful podcasts that add value to conversations around education, student advocacy, and parental challenges. My name is Heather Moore, and I'm the head of school at Strelitz International Academy, and I will be your host. I have over 28 years of experience in independent schools, with 8 years as head of school and 20 years serving as a chief financial officer. I've also raised 2 children, one finishing medical school and one starting law school, and have been married to my wonderful husband for 31 years. On today's episode, we will discuss back-to-school best practices, and we're joined by Alyssa Bren, our Director of Early Years, and Janet Jenkins, our Director of Primary Years. We'll be delving into some helpful topics to get the year started and establish routines to help our young learners thrive. Welcome, Alyssa and Janet. Janet, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, my name is Janet Jenkins. I'm the Director of Primary Years. I've been an innovative educator for 32 years, with 22 of those years being with Strelitz International Academy. This year, my son Matthew graduates from Maury High School, and I have 2 sweet Yorkie poos and love outdoor adventures.
That's great. Thanks for joining us today, Janet.
Thanks.
Miss Bren, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name's Alyssa Brin. I'm the director of the Early Years program. I've been with Strelitz for 20 years now. I started as an Early Years lead teacher in the 4-year-old program and have gotten to know the infants and toddlers very well after being the director in that program for 7 years. I have a 22-year-old son who's a U.S. Marine and live in Virginia Beach, right across the street from my mom.
Okay, so before we dive into tips and tricks for back to school, why don't we just start off with talking a little bit about what does it mean to be an IB-PYP program?
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to say I'm so excited to be a part of Strelitz International Academy, the first international baccalaureate primary years program world school in the Hampton Roads area. I think the learning environment that we've created really naturally lends itself to the core values of our school and also to the IB learner profile traits. The IB Primary Years program is designed to nurture a holistic development in young learners, the age 3 to 12. And at its core, it promotes inquiry-based learning where students explore, they question, they construct their understanding of the world around them. It also encourages critical thinking and creativity and agency, which is self-awareness and independence. Inquiry really isn't just a teaching method. It's kind of a way of thinking and acting while you're developing an international mindedness and leading to discovery.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Janet, for sharing that. I think it really helps our listeners to have a better understanding of what does it mean to be an IB-PYP school. So Alyssa, I was wondering, how can parents help ease the transition from summer break to back to school mode? Because that can be really tough sometimes.
So with the younger ones, it's easy to create that connection from school to home by introducing, once you get your welcome letter from your teachers, introducing your teachers, talking a lot about what's going to happen in school, really kind of just building those relationships before they even meet the teachers for the first time. And then, a core component of the IB program in the early years is learning through play. So just kind of when you come in, and hopefully everyone's going to come to open house, and when you do come in, just playing with your child and letting them see that you have fun playing in the classroom too, and they'll know that this is going to become a safe and happy environment for them.
That's great. Thanks, Alyssa. So how about strategies for separation anxiety for the first day of school? Who wants to tackle that, Janet or Alyssa?
So routine and consistency, it's all going to continue to come back to routine and consistency. So for the little ones especially, creating that routine, making a decision of, how many minutes you have to stay with your little one. We recommend no more than 5 to 10 minutes so they really do understand the idea that this is a place that mommy or daddy leaves them in a safe environment. And then sometimes it's even counting how many hugs you're going to get, how many kisses you're going to get before they leave. And just, again, it comes back to those relationships with those teachers. The teachers need to become that trusted person. And once they start to see that and the children start to understand that this is a safe place to be and they have that sense of belonging, those routines are key to just consistently keep up those routines over and over again.
Yeah, I think one of the hardest things for parents is sometimes when they see their child initially upset, it's hard as a parent to let go of your child to the teacher that you trust. If your child can see that you trust that teacher as you're passing them over while they're screaming sometimes or crying, and you don't want to let them go as a parent, you kind of have to put yourself to the side and say, it's going to be okay. Let your child go with the teacher and then leave as quickly as you can so that the child and teacher can continue to build that relationship.
I think that's great advice. It's so interesting. Wouldn't you guys agree that typically when a parent brings their child to the classroom and the child is upset about mommy or daddy leaving and they're crying, wouldn't you agree that they're done crying in 2 to 5 minutes?
Yes, it's
Typically
usually about 2 to 5 minutes. It's a lot about redirecting and seeing, if there's a special toy or something that the children love, especially in the toddlers and the 2-year-old age. If you can let us know if there's something special that child likes, if we can redirect them, then that crying and that time frame seems to go from about 6 or 7 minutes to 2 to 3 very quickly.
I think it's interesting. When my oldest son was in preschool at Strelitz, he used to hold on to my leg and scream and cry. And I was in the building because I work at the school, but he still did that. He would hold on to my leg and scream and cry. And I felt terrible leaving him down the hallway. But of course, one of the teachers would always come down to me, find me, and tell me he was done doing that the minute you turned the corner and left. So it made me feel better knowing that it really is a short period of time. And then when my youngest son started at preschool, he actually was like, okay, see ya. Didn't even turn around and want to say goodbye. He was in a hurry to go play with his friends. And so it's just interesting how every child is a little bit different. But let's go back to routines, because I think routines is pretty important when we're talking about back to school. Janet, can you share a little bit with us about what you think with regard to routines, especially for elementary age kids, and what do you think would be helpful for the student and the parent when they're coming back to school with regard to routines?
Yeah, routines are incredibly important. They kind of help out, especially if you're having a hectic morning, and you can rely on the routine that you have in place to help you through some of those difficult times, because your child can really get used to doing things independently, especially if the routine stays the same. It's always great to start the day with a very calming routine, set the positive tone for the day ahead, preparing your school materials the night before to have them ready by the door in case you have something last minute that comes up and you have to rush out of the house. You'll have everything ready to go. Have your child help you in the morning routines too, from packing the lunch to packing the backpack, and letting them know what time you expect them to be out the door and in the car ready to go.
How about after school routines?
After school routines are just as important as the morning routines. Your child definitely needs some downtime from the hectic school day. Going straight into a conversation about what happened during your school day. I know as parents that's something that we really want to know, but just having a conversation with your child, letting them know that you're glad to see them, that's a really great way to get the evening routine started in the car and not really talking about school. Let them have that downtime. Once you get home, knowing where to put their things, knowing what you expect them to take out of their backpack, having a snack routine or a dinner routine. I think one of the most important things is establishing a place where your child can go to work at night. And that should be at the same time as well. And it just kind of helps them to scale down their day and get ready for bedtime. And doing something quiet towards the end of the night, like reading with your child, something that they choose, something that they want. It's a really good way to end the day.
Thanks, Janet. How about you, Alyssa? Do you have any input on routines?
So I wanted to touch on the after school question that you asked, because with the younger children, something I hear often from parents is, I ask them what they did at school and they say nothing, and the answer is always nothing.
Yeah.
And parents want to be very involved and engaged in what happens during the day. So we've started to, in the early years, add some questions to our newsletters. So we say things like, ask your child about. And so definitely read those communications from the parents, from the teachers, because there are hints on questions that you can ask. And echoing what Janet said, giving them a few minutes after school to kind of like decompress before you ask the school questions, but asking more specific questions. For the younger children, who did you sit next to at lunch? And if you know their favorite toy, who did you play Magna-Tiles with, and what did you build? Because they're going to be more excited about answering those type of questions than what did you learn, or tell me the book you read, or things like that. They're very into that learning through play. And so those type of questions, asking about their play, might help you get kind of like a homeschool relationship.
That's great. Do you think a bedtime routine actually can help with separation anxiety in the morning, dropping off at school? I'm just curious what your thoughts on that would be.
So I definitely think that from a very young age, I'm even thinking down to some of our older infants, that a routine would help with every aspect of the day. Consistency matters. I keep saying that over and over again. And so even if it's a story and it's the same story they read at school, things like that. So the more you can build those relationships, especially for the younger children who need that connection and need that that memory. So that memory recall, oh, Maura so-and-so read that book to me too. So if you can just kind of find those tiny little connections and build them into your routines, those are amazing. I definitely think that setting a set routine, even for the younger children, is extremely important.
So I don't know about the two of you, but I know when my kids were little, I had everything on a schedule. I don't know if that was also because I was a working parent, I'm not sure, but I mean, everything was down to a routine. My kids knew when they came home from school, first they would get a snack, then we would sit down and it was homework time. You had to get your homework done, then you could go outside and play with your friends. But also, like, thinking about evening and after dinner and stuff like that, bedtime was always exactly the same. And I learned that the hard way, of course, because of course several times, we took our kids out past their bedtime and they would start, throwing a fit because they were tired, and it wasn't their fault, it was really our fault, because we really shouldn't have had them out past their bedtime. But I always had an exact bedtime routine. When they were really little, it was Mommy and Daddy are going to read a story, then you're going to go to bed. Then as they got older, it was you're going to read the story, then you're going to go to bed. But nonetheless, we always had a very set routine for what time you go to bed, what time you get up. And of course, as they grew, some of those things changed. Like some of the responsibilities that I did as a parent, I started handing off to them, like packing your lunch, like Janet was talking about. It was now your job to pack your lunch. Sometimes they did it in the evening before they went to bed, and sometimes it just depends on their personality. Some of them would do it in the morning. And picking out your clothes, oh, I remember that. That was a big thing. I remember when my child got old enough that I could say, okay, you need to pick out your clothes, but we did it at night so that it wasn't like a big event in the morning that would take too long. So they would always pick out their clothes and lay them out. I think they were probably in elementary school when we were doing things like that. But I can't say enough about how important routines are for you. Eat dinner as a family around the table, you have a conversation, and you try to eat dinner at the same time. You wake up at the same time, you go to bed at the same time, you do homework at the same time. All of those things create an environment that your child knows what the expectations are. There's not a lot of surprises, and it just helps them do a better job. It helps them thrive in all that they're learning at school. Yeah, Alyssa.
I wanted to touch on when you said that if there are parents that sometimes have difficulty implementing the routines, what you talked about with the picking out the clothes.
Yeah.
So offering choices within the routine. So for example, for the younger ones, when you go upstairs, you have 3 books out and they get to choose which book. So basically there's negotiables and non-negotiables within the routine. So we always read a book, but I always get to choose my book. So what, like you said, picking out the clothes, the choices, and giving them that little bit of power. I thought about my own child when he was 4 years old. We had stairs in the house at the time, and getting him just to go from downstairs to upstairs. Once he got upstairs, he understood the routine was going to bed. So we ended up putting the routine and the choices of he could choose how he walked up the stairs. Did he want to be an alligator or a lion or an elephant? So sometimes just offering that control and that power where you can give it, but still keeping that routine the same. Our routine is not negotiable. However, you can choose how we do some of the things in the routine is important, especially for some of those younger ones.
I love that. That is such great advice.
Yeah, and I think you actually have to find out what routines work best for your family too. One of the things that were very helpful in our house, we had picture charts, especially before my son could read. I could point to the picture and he would know what was coming up next. That was just helpful for our family to stay on track. We got me with my busy life, and of course when he was younger his busy mind never stopped, so having that picture chart for us really worked well. Of course now it's more of a to-do list for both of us as he's grown up and he's a senior in high school. He can get himself off to school, but that was really helpful, was knowing what to expect. I would like to touch a little bit more on the sleep routine, because I think that is probably everybody's most important time of the day to get themselves ready for the next morning. When we go to sleep with our devices in hand, as many of us probably do, as adults we know that our minds just keep going and they don't stop. And that's the exact same thing it is for your child, except probably 100 times more. This is the time where a lot of, especially in our younger kids, their brain activities are just starting to fire. And putting an iPad in their hand right before they go to bed is not the best way to get them to sleep, because it's going to keep their brains active. And a good rule of thumb is an hour, 2 hours, really not even any time before bed for iPads, but at least 2 to an hour before bedtime, put those devices down. Just do quiet reading, listen to music, do some evening meditation before you go to bed, just so that your minds and your child's mind can be rested as they get ready for the night's sleep.
That's also really great advice. Thanks, Janet. I appreciate that. Devices, at bedtime are a challenge for many of us, especially adults, I think. But when you're talking about your children, I mean, I was fortunate because those things didn't exist when my children were in elementary school, so I didn't have that fight. But in today's world, kids starting at 2, 3, maybe less, I don't know, they have their parents' cell phone or they have the iPad. So I'm sure that's
and then it becomes
a
true battle sometimes.
Yeah, I bet it really, really does. I think a good rule of thumb would be to keep all of those types of devices like downstairs or
out of the bedrooms.
Out of the bedrooms, yes, exactly. Because otherwise you might have some friends pulling those devices out after you go to bed and you may not be aware of it, which is definitely not a great idea for anybody. So why don't we talk a little bit about how we can help our children build relationships with their new teachers and with new kids in the class, because as we all know, every year the kids get mixed up a little bit. We want them to have a broader social experience, so we want them to not necessarily be in the same class with the same kids every single year. So this is part of what goes into creating the class every year. But what can we do as parents to help our children build that relationship with that new teacher and those new kids? Alyssa, do you want to share your thoughts on that?
So definitely the IB really stresses a focus on relationships in the early years, and I think that just discussing as soon as you find out your child's teacher's names, making that name a very common name, talking about it when they're playing with their favorite toy. Oh, I see you're playing with dinosaurs. I bet JJ's going to play dinosaurs with you too. Conversations like that so that they hear it and they know. Even in your welcome letters that the parents are receiving, there's little tidbits about the teachers. So just saying, oh, your teacher loves the beach. Do you remember when we went to the beach? Because those connections are going to become really important. You want to kind of have them have a picture in their head already of who they're walking into. And the teachers do a really good job of making these classrooms cozy and calm and these great environments for them to walk into. So I think that them walking in and already having an idea, oh, this is your teacher, we talked about her, she loves the beach, or anything like that will really, really help. And I also think that when Janet spoke a little bit about the children seeing that their parents have this connection with the teachers, and they know and they trust the teachers. So make sure that your interaction with the teachers is really positive and engaging, because the children, especially the younger children, are going to be watching you. They're going to be watching the parent and say, oh, mommy thinks this teacher is pretty cool and a safe place to go, so I feel that way too. And constantly reinforcing those relationships.
That's great. Janet, do you have anything to add to that with regard to like peers? How can we help our children build relationships with new peers?
Honestly, I think Alyssa said it great when she said keep the positivity going, and I think that's the most important thing that the parents can do with their child, is to really just have positive conversations about the school. Now, we know that things happen sometimes at school, and we're here to help mitigate those situations that come up that might have one student upset with another or feelings get hurt. And I think really talking to your child about going to your teacher and asking for advice, or even any teacher really in the primary years program, because our kids are outside together and we have many moments where we're all doing things in different classrooms together. But having positive conversations with your child about friendships and understanding that things happen, rather than, oh my goodness, what happened today at school, that can add a lot of anxiety to your child that you might not see in the beginning, but it could really set them on a path that makes coming to school not so great. And also having open communication with your child's teacher about what's going on and the conversations that you're hearing from your child, without making them such a big deal in front of your child, but really going back to the teacher and seeing what solutions you can come up with. Those are all great ways for parents to help their child build relationships with their peers and their teachers.
So I also just want to add a little bit to that. I was just thinking about it when I was listening to you. I mean, some other suggestions that come to my mind would be, if there's new students in the class that your child doesn't know, as the parent, you can encourage that relationship with the new student. You could ask for a play date. You could try to do some things outside of school. You could encourage your child to, put themselves out there and get to know this new student and see what they have in common. That's just one thought that enters my mind. But also another thought I had was, when you go out to recess can be daunting at school for some reason. Look for kids who are playing something that you like. If you like playing basketball, look to see who's out there playing basketball and go ask them if you can join. If you like swinging on the swings, go over to the swings and meet the girls or boys that are swinging and ask them if you can have the next turn. Things like that are things parents can talk to their child about ahead of time and encourage them to do those things, which I think can help to build better peer relationships at school. Alyssa, did you want to add anything?
I actually was going to echo exactly what you said about, I was going to say that we have families at our school that are great at welcoming the new families, and I know a lot of those connections have already been made over the summer, which is fabulous. I just think continuing to do that and creating that sense of belonging. One of our core values is community and building community. So I feel that, again, most of our families do a great job of that already. But just if you hear a name that, we're a community. So if you hear a name that your child's saying that's a new name that you haven't heard before, then kind of like research that a little bit more. Who is that? Do I know this family? Can we reach out? Can we do something on the weekend? And just kind of reinforce that bond and create that sense of belonging for these new families.
That's great.
I'm so glad that you said recess. Can I just add my thoughts to recess? Of
course, absolutely.
Recess is actually a time that we like to give our students just the agency to go and be creative and to be in their imaginary play world, to play games with their peers, to have a good time. It really is a great time for us to, as educators, to kind of sit back and watch the children and let the children develop in their peer relationships. There's going to be arguments. There are going to be times where we're not always happy with the people that we're around as adults. We have to communicate our feelings to each other. And recess is a great time to just let the children develop the skills to take care of those situations on their own. In fact, the teachers often encourage the students during recess time to work it out and come back and let them know how things are going. We really want a student to be able to feel confident enough to share their feelings, even if they're hurt or sad or mad. We want them to be able to share those feelings with their peers without an adult getting involved, so that they can see that, yes, I can take care of my problems. It's a great way to build social skills and develop in ways that are adult free, because sometimes we put things in there that we don't really need to, and it's good to let them just solve it on their own.
It teaches them how to advocate for themselves. Rather than us constantly getting in the middle of whose rules were the right rules for that game, or who really won, or who's really out. That's the biggest thing I hear at recess all the time. He was out. And the other one, no, I wasn't. They have to work that out themselves. In fact, I actually remember when my kids would start arguing about something when they were little, either a rule in a game or a toy they were playing with, and they would come to me to complain about it and expect me to fix it. I remember I used to always say to them, you guys have to figure it out. You guys have to work it out. I can't do it for you. And if it was an item like a toy that they both wanted to play with at the same time, I would always tell them, if you can't work it out, you know what's going to happen, and that means I'm going to take that toy and you guys are going to have to find something else to do. So because I wanted them to learn and understand how to work out conflict, it creates, grit in a child. Everybody loves that word. That's a buzzword, I believe, but it's really true. They do have to learn how to resolve conflict on their own. You can't do it for them all the time, because you will not be there to do it all the time. So it's very important lesson to learn.
And of course, our recess teachers are there.
Oh, absolutely.
To keep our students safe and to help them in those situations. And they are quick to get over when they can to help out in any circumstances. So it's really,
safety first, obviously. But
I think it's a big reason that the IB uses the term facilitator to describe the teacher.
Yeah.
This is a great example of that. They continually use that word facilitator, because the adult and the teacher, the educator in the situation, is there to facilitate the learning or facilitate the conflict resolution, but the children are given the agency to work that out themselves. So I love the fact that they use that word.
Yeah, I do too. That's great. So real quick, why don't we talk about, to kind of wrap up, why don't we talk about what parents can do to stay involved and engaged in their children's learning? Because I know sometimes as a parent you can feel sort of on the outside of what's happening with your child at school, and that's also why we're constantly asking them the question of, what did you do today? That's why that's the thing parents constantly ask their child when they pick them up at the end of the day, because they feel a little disconnected from their child and what they did. The younger your child is, the more you feel that way too. As they get older, I think that kind of eases up a little bit, but nonetheless, what are some ways that parents can stay involved, Alyssa?
So this is our first year in the early years that we, each age level, starting with the 2-year-old, has a way of family engagement in their different transdisciplinary units. So for example, the 2-year-olds are going to have a Shabbat kit that they're creating throughout the year, and the parents are going to be involved in that. The 3-year-olds are having traditions discussed throughout the year, different family traditions and things like that. And then we have a 4-year-old program that's been ongoing for quite a few years called Family of the Week, where the families are invited in. So there are a lot of opportunities for the parents to come and be engaged in the classroom just on a learning experiences. I think that is a big deal, to always read the newsletters from the teachers. And again, we've really worked in the early years to come up with little bits and pieces that go in the newsletter to say, oh, this is what we did. Ask your child about this and this. And we're always sending out questions. We were looking for community experts. We were interested in what happened with the trees today. Is there any parents that happen to be experts in planting or gardening and things like that? So definitely, if you have an expertise or something to lend to the classroom, do not, feel free, do not feel any apprehension to reach out to the teachers and things like that. And then also just all of our different family engagements that we have, our Shabbat sing-alongs, our family events in PY. I think the more that you can come and be a face in the community with your child, it strengthens that huge relationship and that community feeling.
Love that. Thanks, Alyssa. How about you, Janet? What can kids in primary years, how can parents stay engaged?
It's a little bit different as the students start to get older, because they start to really gain that independence, and that's where you see them doing more and more things on your own, and you're like, wait, I want to still be your mommy, or let me help you out. And sometimes it's good for us as parents to recognize when it's time to say, okay, my child can do this, and start that little back off. But I think I'm going to jump off of Alyssa's programming with her families. I think that the early years has some super great ways to keep the families engaged and coming into the classroom, especially with the family of the week. It's always fun to see what they're bringing down the hall and guess whose parent it is and what they're going to be doing. With the primary years families, we need community experts. Letting your child's teacher know what your expertise is, a hobby that you might have. Those are ways that we can say, hey, I think this parent would be great coming into this classroom to talk about what they do as a doctor, if that's something that we're learning in one of the units of inquiry. Or if we're talking about a gardening unit, if someone's a landscaper or anything like that, coming in and giving their expertise to the class is definitely a great way to stay involved in the learning. But with the primary years, it also trickles into evening, especially more so than the early years, as your child starts to become more independent, and you still have some time from kindergarten to second grade, I would say. That is, let's see what your homework is, let's work together. But third grade through fifth grade, I think giving them the independence that they need sometimes, instead of constantly talking to them about what they're doing at school, have regular conversations about what inquiries are happening inside the classroom and what things they are interested in, and kind of helping them to dive into those inquiries a little bit further. Let's say they're doing a great STEM project at school, and I know our third grade class is filled with a lot of STEM projects, and your child comes home very excited about that project. Have those conversations with them. Don't squash that excitement. Keep it going. See what you can do at home to further their learning experiences that they have at school, and really promote the things that they are excited to share with you.
I think that's all wonderful information. Okay, so before we wrap up, let's just go over what the key points of today's episode were. First was transition from summer break to a back-to-school routine, and what can we do to help our children transition. And I think there was a lot of good information, but one of them, please come to the meet and greet and bring your child. It will help them transition on the first day of school, because they will have already met their teacher, they will have even seen some of their classmates, and they will have brought their school supplies in. They'll know where their cubby is. So that's a great way to help them transition. Strategies for separation anxiety. Talk about that with your child ahead of time. Make sure you set a plan for how long you'll be staying with your child, or how many kisses you're going to give them, or have them bring a special toy with them for early years. I think that's more applicable. Also, how can we set morning routines and rituals? That's very important. I think routines are one of the key aspects of helping our kids transition from being out of school to back into school. So morning routines, after school homework routines, bedtime routines. Another great point was setting technology limits, and also setting a special place and time for homework, I think, was another really great piece of information that we should consider and maybe plan for ahead of time as parents. And finally, we talked about how we as parents can stay engaged and involved in our children's learning. And I think there was a lot of great tips. Come to all of our school events. If you're an expert in a certain area, let us know. Reach out to your child's teacher. You can also reach out to Alyssa and Janet, because we love to bring in community experts into our classroom. I want to thank both of you for joining me today for this episode of Back to School for SIA. Again, we have Alyssa Brin, Early Years Director, with us today, and Janet Jenkins, Primary Years Director. If you would like to reach out to them to have further discussions about back to school and get some information from them about things that you can do to help your child have a great transition from summer, you're welcome to reach out to Alyssa Brin. She can be reached at ebrin@stralitzacademy.org, and Janet Jenkins is jjenkins@stralitzacademy.org. I want to thank all of our listeners for joining us today. We would love some feedback from you regarding our podcast. If you found value in today's episode, I hope that you will subscribe to our future episodes. I hope you will share this episode with friends and family. You can visit our website, and we will have some resources up on our website with tips and tricks and just back to school best practice advice. So please take a look at that. We plan to put out an episode every other week is our current plan. So next episode should be in about 2 weeks. So we look forward to that. A few reminders. Our school meet and greet is Friday, August 18th from 9 to 11. Please make sure you come by with your children, meet the teacher, drop off your school supplies so you don't have to worry about that on the first day of school. Enjoy a sweet treat on us. We will have the Kona Ice Truck here again this school year to kick off another amazing year. Also, the SIA Golf Tournament is Wednesday, August 30th at VB National. For more information about our golf tournament, please visit our website, or you can reach out to Karen Simon at csimon@stralitzacademy.org. And remember, it takes a whole community to build a strong foundation for our children to grow and develop into the future leaders of our local and global community. On behalf of SIA, I thank you all for joining us today. Have a good afternoon.